Never have I ever been given such a meme-worthy topic as the Ever Given, a ship that most people have understandably mistaken as the Evergreen. Evergreen is actually the company who owns the ship. You can see the actual name of the cargo ship in smaller font here on the bow. The Ever Given was delivering cargo from China to the Netherlands, and the quickest route for it to take was through the Suez Canal, which connects the Mediterranean and Red Seas. The Ever Given ended up getting stuck in the Suez for a couple days, halting most of the traffic going through the canal, which was a big problem given that 10% of global trade passes through the Suez Canal. Estimates of how long the canal would be blocked ranged from a couple days to a couple weeks. With the possibility of the canal being closed for weeks, some ships decided to take the long way around the Cape of Good Hope to get to their destinations in Europe, rejecting modernity and returning to hundreds of years of tradition. Given the global importance of the Suez Canal, I thought that it might be interesting for us to address the history of the canal and how the Ever Given managed to shut the canal down for almost a week. For millennium, rulers of Egypt sought to connect the Nile River to the Red Sea by canal. Doing so would have granted the ancient Egyptians with tremendous influence over the control of territory and extending trade networks in the region, since it was faster to travel by boat than by land. As far back as the mid-18th century BC, almost 4,000 years ago, construction on the first such canal started under Pharaoh Senusret III. A problem that the pharaoh encountered, however, was that the Red Sea was at a higher elevation than the Nile. Without a way for them to control the flow of water, the salt water from the sea would have flowed into the fertile river water of the Nile, which would have resulted in devastation to the Nile ecosystem and crop failure throughout Egypt, as Egyptian agriculture relies heavily on the Nile River. Various Egyptian pharaohs would try over the next 15 centuries to try and solve the problem facing the canal, but they always ran into the same issue. It wouldn't be until around 273 BC when the engineers of Greek pharaoh Ptolemy II would solve the problem with the creation of the waterlock. The purpose of a waterlock is to raise or lower a ship in the canal if there is a difference in elevation. The ship would sail into a portion of the canal that would then be sealed behind and in front of them. Water would then either be pumped in or pumped out of the chamber to raise or lower the ship. Think of it as an elevator for ships. This precursor to the Suez Canal is known as the Canal of Pharaohs. The ancient canal would be in use until 767, when it was closed to prevent supplies from Egypt being sent to Mecca and Medina on the Arabian Peninsula, cities that were in rebellion against the newly established Abbasid Caliphate. Following the closure of the Canal of the Pharaohs, several world powers over the next millennium would imagine creating a canal connecting the Mediterranean and Red Seas. The Republic of Venice became interested in such a canal in the late 15th century after a route connecting Europe and India was found by going around the Cape of Good Hope, which was a problem since beforehand all spice that came into Europe would have to go through the Arabian Peninsula and then through Venice. The Ottomans became interested in such a canal as Christian European powers extended their influence into India and the Indonesian islands during the colonial era. If the Ottomans would have been able to construct such a canal, they could have connected their naval fleets in the Mediterranean, Black, and Red Seas, making them a naval power throughout the world. French Emperor Napoleon Bonaparte considered building the canal, but falsely believed that the Red Sea was higher than the Mediterranean, which would have required the construction of expensive waterlocks. In reality, the Mediterranean and Red Seas are at the same elevation, and the project would have been much cheaper than Napoleon had expected. In the decades after Napoleon, surveys would find that there was no difference in elevation, and entrepreneurs and engineers approached Great Britain to get them to build the canal. But the British and the East India Company, which controlled most of the global trade, feared that such a canal through Egypt would disrupt their trade supremacy. Eventually, in 1856, the entrepreneurs and engineers would get permission from the Ottoman Viceroy of Egypt to form a company to construct a canal open to all nations to use. Over the course of 10 years, from 1859 to 1869, an estimated 30,000 people would be working on the construction of the canal at any time, with upwards of 1.5 million workers having been involved by the project's completion. The canal was opened on the 17th of November, 1869, with temporary mosques and churches being built at the inauguration site, so that both Christian and Islamic celebrations could be held, celebrating the connection of the Mediterranean and Red Seas, a feat long thought impossible. Since the opening of the canal, it has rarely ever been closed, except for maintenance. Most notably, however, the canal would be closed for 8 years, between 1967 and 1975, due to wars fought between Israel and their Arab neighbors. However, the closure everyone is talking about right now is the Ever Given blocking the canal, much like Austin Powers blocked a hallway when he tried to do a 100-point turn. So, what happened? Ships going through the Suez must wait their turn, either in the Mediterranean or the Red Sea, before they can enter the canal. Now, did you know that you were able to track the routes of ships around the world? You can do so using websites such as vesselfinder.com or myshiptracking.com. Well, some people decided to check the tracking information for the Ever Given and found that while it was waiting to enter the Suez Canal, it ended up drawing this image. Much like blocking global trade is considered to be, the Ever Given had made quite the dick move. And while it is a bit of a stretch, if you zoom out further, the phallic drawing also appears to be surrounded by a pair of butt cheeks. There is no evidence that these drawings were on purpose, but they are quite unfortunate to have been drawn given what was going to happen next. The Ever Given is classified as a Suezmax, meaning that it is one of the largest ships allowed to pass through the Suez Canal. Any ships larger than a Suezmax have to take the long way around to Europe, going around the Cape of Good Hope. Some of the specifications for a Suezmax include a maximum length of 1,300 feet, 254 feet wide, and a 66-foot draft. Draft refers to the amount of the ship that is underwater. The length of the Ever Given is right at that 1,300-foot limit. Now, the exact cause of the Ever Given getting stuck are still under investigation as of this video being recorded. But according to preliminary reports, as the ship was passing through the canal on March 23rd, a dust storm was passing through the area, limiting visibility. A large gust of wind from said dust storm supposedly pushed the front of the ship, the bow, off course. The ship was now facing the bank of the canal and ended up running aground, with the part of the bow underwater being buried in the bank of the canal. Being 1,300 feet long, the Ever Given is longer than the canal is wide, and that's how it ended up in this position. So, what is the estimated damage of 10% of global trade being halted for 6 days? It is estimated that each day the canal being closed resulted in the loss of $10 billion US, so $60 billion in total. And as for direct damage to the canal itself, estimates are at $1 billion. We can only imagine what Pharaoh Senusret III would have to say about these damages if he were alive today.